Okay, we are 1 minute past, so I think we'll make a start. So good morning again and welcome to Make UK, the manufacturers organisation's online or virtual event on recruitment and retention. Thanks for joining us. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Chris Corkin. I am one of the regional managers here at Make UK. And at the moment, we are hearing, of course, from members across the country about the shortage of labour, difficulty to recruit, the competition in retaining staff and wage pressures, and particularly poignant, that last point, given today's news that inflation has surged above 4% as well. So we do have a packed agenda for this session with some expert guest speakers to provide you with guidance on these issues, both in the short term and in the longer term. And to give you an idea or overview of the agenda for this morning, we will start with a recruitment expert for a market update. We also have Head of HR and Consultancy at Make UK on retention methods. We're also really pleased to be joined by an award-winning automotive manufacturer for developing future talent to share with us some best practice, and also one of our Make UK policy experts on skills. We will also take a pause for a poll during the session to receive your feedback on this topic, but also to share insight with you guys and show how other businesses are reacting as well. Then we will end the session with a Q&A with our panelists if there is time. And in terms of today's housekeeping, we will be recording this session and it will be available to members, and so will the materials and presentations presented. If you do have any questions as we go along, please be welcome to use the Q&A function, which you can access at the menu at the bottom of your screen. And any other kind of more general comment, then please do the chat function as we get, and I'm sure you'll all be more and more familiar with those sorts of things on Teams and Zooms as we've been doing this over the last 18 months or so. So to kick us off, I'm really pleased to introduce you Richard Hogg, joining us as Chief Executive from Jackson Hogg for a recruitment market update. So over to you, please, Richard.
Thank you very much, Chris. I'm just going to check out these slides now, if that's okay. Brilliant. Is that coming through for you, Chris?
Yes, I can see.
Excellent. So thank you for joining me, everyone, on the call this morning. Given that we've only got 15 minutes, clearly I can't solve the whole of your recruitment problems in 15 minutes. However, if you can glean anything from this presentation, please do so, because hopefully you'll get an insight into what's going on. So yes, my name is Richard Hogg. I'm the Chief Exec at Jackson Hogg. For any of you who work in engineering and manufacturing, I started off my career as a graduate from Newcastle University. I was sponsored through by Siemens Power Generation and started my career designing steam turbines before moving into recruitment search and selection in 2007. So just to give you a little background on my business. So we are active as a team of 75 specialists. We are active in the science, technology, engineering and manufacturing sectors, which are naturally all relevant to Make UK members. We are all centered around the value of care for our clients, care for our candidates, care for each other in the team. And we are working internationally, so very embedded in the UK market, but we're also operating internationally into America, into the Nordics heavily, but globally in terms of search. We're growing about 119% year on year. So just to give an insight as to what you're feeling in the recruitment market. So this is a weighted average graph showing permanent placements since 2007 to present. So for any of you that lived through the 08-09 recession, you'll see that dip back in 08-09. For any of you that have worked with recruiters during that time, in the start of 2009, I genuinely thought I would never fill a role again. It was that deep and that painful that I didn't actually think the market would recover. But suffice to say, it did recover. And if you notice that bouncing around since about 2010, the permanent placements hit a peak of about 14, then dropped down. If any of you remember the nervousness pre-pandemic, about 1920, with all the Brexit uncertainty, that's why you start to see a bit of a drop off with permanent placements then. for any of you at the Make UK conference back, start of 2020, before the pandemic, March hit, that deep drop then in the March of 20, which obviously many of you on the call will remember the heavy furloughing and the number of people that were clearly out of offices. But if you imagine the number of people that weren't being recruited and permanent placements going right down, as well as temporary employment went right down then. But look at the sharp recovery, and that's what you're seeing with this very sharp V-shaped recovery coming out of it. And what is really interesting, if you look at both permanent and temporary employment, it's actually rising to higher than above pre-pandemic levels, which is interesting going back on the graph. Talking now about permanent salaries and temporary wages. Again, 0809 with a big credit crunch back then, the big drop, going up to 14, bit of a spike there, bouncing around again, and then that massive drop again in the March of 20. But look at the graph coming out of what we're seeing now, 2021. The graph is going absolutely nuts on the back end. So when you hear in the news, this is KPMG's data, but in the news, when they're talking about wage inflation, this is the graph that's showing what is actually happening in terms of comparable wage inflation. These salaries are definitely increasing coming out the back end. It isn't just a one-off dotted around a few people in the sectors where we feel like it's busy and we can't get hold of people. There's a general thing in the market where salaries are going up significantly, and it isn't just permanent, it is permanent and temporary employees. So market summary overall, we're seeing an unprecedented increase in permanent placements. So not just in like isolated parts of the market, I'd say across the board. Clearly there's a few exceptions. If you chat to many of the international long-haul flight companies, clearly they have not rebounded back. Clearly there's parts of hospitality that haven't come back. There'll be pockets of engineering, supply chain that haven't come back yet. But if you were to take a barometer of the members on this call, I'd be amazed if not all companies on here are generally in recruitment mode and feeling the pain of recruitment. There is this labour gap that people are talking about of nearly 1 million workers. That has clearly been compounded with what's going on with Brexit. We already had skill shortages, but when you look at the Eastern European workers that haven't come back in the economy, all the migrant workers that would normally be here, there are just a number of pressures that haven't been relieved. And so, yes, we're rebounding from COVID, but actually some of these wider things are a result of other impacting forces within the market. 80% of employers in the UK plan to hire over the next 12 months. Steeper increases in starting pay. 85% of employers saying increasing diversity in their workforce is a priority. Now, the reason that's important for people that are trying to get diverse boards in their company or diverse workforce, if we've already got a limited supply of candidates on the market and we're trying to get the right level of diversity into those shortlists, what you're going to find is the shortlists were already short, but once you try to get the right level of diversity within those shortlists, you're going to feel even shorter shortlists. So just be aware of that once you're trying to recruit. It is something that all employers are looking at the moment. 18% of businesses are concerned about not being able to offer competitive salaries in this quarter. So I'd say this quarter, we have definitely seen the most pressure on inflation and salary for starting salaries out of any point in the year. You'd expect to see obviously the usual kind of mid-December correction with people thinking about Turkey at Christmas time, but there are just these pressures about offering competitive salaries in the market. So we'll touch on that on the next slide. Other things you need to be thinking about, businesses are thinking about 29% are talking about being impacted by skill shortages, 28% talking about retaining a staff, the challenge of flexible working, 20%, and 19% talking about meeting customer demand. And I don't need, again, to remind people on the call, but the number of my clients that are struggling with steel prices, semiconductor availability of chips, availability of rising costs of joinery products and the rest. There is already pressure in the market from the rising cost of raw materials or the supply chain problems of bringing things into the UK. and therefore compounding the problem of just paying people a lot more or trying to get hold of staff. There are just problems that need to be considered in amongst wider things that are hitting business at the moment. 58% of businesses are confident in their ability to hire over the coming months. So even though there's a lot of things going on and a lot of headwinds, businesses are still generally confident in the ability to hire. And I would say, even though you might feel the headwinds, I think there are reasons to be optimistic in the current market. I think you just need to be thinking differently to how your competitors might be thinking. There are still ways of recruiting. But there is a bit of a caveat on this. For those employers on the call today who are seeing their staff being offered big, juicy roles externally, and then you turn around and say, no, we can't afford to lose you in your team. So this counter-offer situation where you say, we're going to retain you with a higher offer, stay with our business. Companies are typically paying at least 9% typically to retain staff. So to put that into context, if you're got a member of staff on £50,000, typically, let's imagine a 10% increase, 55k to retain them. 52% of those staff are probably going to leave you within a year. That's irrespective of the salary. So it's a wider thing than just the salary. And 19% of those people who have taken that counter offer to stay with you are probably likely to leave within 6 months. So I do appreciate that might sound quite crushing to those who are retaining staff, but I hate to say this as a recruiter, but once you know that someone is starting to look, you probably need a succession plan in place to be mindful of what is coming anyway, even though you might think that person will never leave you and it was just about money and paying for child school fees or buying a bigger house. There are wider things at play. So summary again, talent and demand, everyone is hiring for the best talent. Salaries and remuneration sharply increasing. Staff retention is key, absolutely key. That is the best thing you can do, by the way, retain your staff without trying to look for other people. I know it sounds incredibly obvious, but there are ways and means of doing that. Too much demand in the market and too little supply. So it's a classic front end, back end problem. When you've got too much demand, too little supply, clearly that's where you get the inflationary pressure. Expectation, we see this continuing for the next 2 to 3 years, just with the whole squeeze on the pipeline and then the release of the work coming through. The fact that so much work, so many projects that have been delayed are coming through, we don't see any sign of this dropping off for the next 2 to 3 years. Recommendations. So what can your business control? Company culture. I think this is one of the best things that you can control. It's actually a bit of a longer term play, but I would say to you, the best clients that we're working with that are retaining their employees, that are doing the right things in the market, are the companies with the best culture and the best leaders, the best humility of leadership, where you can have trust within the organization, a real understanding of what's happening throughout the business. Employees are engaged, and therefore, just by law of attraction, people want to be drawn to that organization. So think about your culture. If you've got toxicity in your culture or problems or people that I think are high performers, but they aren't living out the values, I question why they're in your business, and you probably need to do business with them. Purpose and values, these aren't soft, fluffy things anymore about vision, mission, values. In the current market, you need to be absolutely nailed about what your purpose is, where you're going, why should people want to join you. It isn't just about developing the sexiest motor anymore and getting a lot of money for that. People want to know about what your social impact is, what you're doing about training, what you're doing about the wider things in your team, what impact are you having to wider society. Why should people come to your organization? And you can't just hide behind, we've got this amazing brand and people think we're awesome, so clearly we can just invite anyone to come and work for us. You'll find that you'll have to work harder. The good companies are getting better, the better companies are getting even better. So just be prepared for that in the current market. Company reputation, branding, we're talking about that. So what are the things you can make to make your brand of your business phenomenal in the market? Do people understand what you do as a business, or do you go to the website and you see the share price and you don't really understand what they do? Everything to do with your employer brand journey needs to be communicated clearly, and not just through your website, through who you are on LinkedIn, who you are on different social platforms, when you turn up at events. Everything needs to be coordinated and really singing the praises of your business. What is the reason for joining your company journey? What is your journey? Is it creating the best motor in the world or the best new wind turbine? But why is that important? Why is that important to society? What does that mean to the people in your team? What does it mean to your customers? What does it mean to everything that you do in sector? So just think about the wider company journey that you're on. Defining the employee value proposition. So it's not just about starting salaries. Yes, these things are important. You'll find in the current world that we work in, people are joining businesses often for lesser salaries, but the benefits might be better in different forms, earlier start and finish times, or some degree of flexible working, or there might be a better pension scheme, or there could be better opportunity for training. It may be softer things. You may not be able to compete with these things, but how good are the mentors in your company? How good are the people from industry that have got 20, 30, 40 years of experience? That is worth an absolute fortune. Do you communicate that to the market? Do people go on LinkedIn and see videos of your people in your business and allow you to connect with the people there? Build transparent career trajectories. People aren't just looking for a job. They want to know where their career is going. They want to know that they can be the top of their game. They want to know that they can stretch, but the journey is different for everyone. I want to be an entrepreneur and grow businesses. My guys would hate that. They want to grow amazing teams, develop people. What is your journey? What are you trying to help people with in your business? It'll be different for different people, but don't try to just offer a job spec, which is like a closed box. What are you selling in the interview process about where you're going to take your employees? By the way, if I'm preaching to the converted for anyone on this call, you may think this is all obvious. If it is all obvious, that is great. But, please bear with me for those that it isn't obvious for. Bet on talent. So rather than just trying to find the square peg, square holes, all of that, we've got companies like Halma and others that are betting on talent. They're betting on employees or potential talent that doesn't quite fit the job specs, but it fits the business and where they're going on the journey. Back to where they're going with the journey. If you know where you're going on the journey, you know what type of talent you need. So that's where that is relevant. Bet on the people and the individual rather than just purely on the skill fit. Skills can be taught. Behaviors of good people often can't. Remote, flexible, hybrid working, we talked about. These things are really important. By the way, we've got clients at the minute that are trying to introduce back to normal 9 till 5, and we're trying to explain why we're seeing so many CVs on the job boards. You'll find clients have come out of furlough and they don't want to go back to a solid 9 till 5 job. So that's probably obvious, but be aware. Competitive salary, benefits, total remuneration. It's not all about the salary. Interview process, and being mindful of Chris's time as I'm watching the clock. Interview for both sides. It's not just about interviewing someone for the job. Employees, potential employees, are interviewing you as well as you're interviewing them. It's a two-way process. In the current market, you can't be assuming that everyone's just coming for a job. You're selling your business to them and they're selling themselves to you. It's a two-way process. And the thing that's really important about this, we've got clients at the moment that might be recruiting 50 employees. For every 5 people you probably, or 50 people you employ, there'll be another 250 people that are probably rejected. That's on the 1 in 5 ratio. What are you doing with the 250 people that are rejected? Do they leave every interview process singing the praises of your business? How did you treat them through the journey? Did you get back to them fast? Did they leave having an amazing interview? Did they feel thoroughly grilled? What are they going to say to people in the market? You may not think they're your brand ambassadors, but if they've had a bad experience, expect them to go to the market and tell your prospective new talent that they've had a bad experience. Or conversely, think about everyone that comes through needs to have an awesome experience and needs to resonate in the market about how amazing you are. Structured and consistent approach. We've got businesses where the approach to recruitment just varies across all the hiring managers. That becomes inconsistent and it's difficult to hire. If one person's doing a Teams, another person's doing face-to-face, get it structured, get it consistent, maintain momentum. Crucially important in the current market. The clients that are moving the fastest are the ones that are recruiting talent. So if you need people quickly, it's not long gone are the days where you can have weeks between the interview stages. If you're meeting someone good on a Monday, you need to get back to them on a Tuesday with a view to probably lining something up towards the back end of the week or certainly the next week. But you need absolute close candidate management, whether that's through your recruiter or through your internal recruitment or HR processes. The candidates need to feel ultimately loved through the process and managed. Nothing is rocket science about this. Treat other people as you would expect to be treated yourself, and then you'll get the best out of your process. If you're leaving it weeks between stages or waiting for sign-off from America for 2 to 3 weeks, expect that you won't recruit. Expect that other people are going to get offers. You're going to get very messy processes. You'll lose people quickly. Shorter time to hire. I think we've covered that off. Compelling offers. In the current market, go in with the strongest offer that you can. Again, gone are the days where you think you can be cheap on a starting offer. You need to go in strong. Know that you're probably going to negotiate anyway because other good candidates have got 2 to 3 other offers. You need to go in strong, knowing that the employees will want you to come in with the best offer possible. If you go in light, expect them to go into another business. And I would ask you, what is the cost of repeating this process? Added value, I'll fly through these things being conscious of time, but website and social media, get that absolutely hot. Glassdoor, make sure your online reviews are really red hot. If they are negative on Glassdoor, people check Glassdoor. If you've got bad reviews, people will be put off your business. Testimonials and video content, you've probably got amazing testimonials on your business. Get them shown on LinkedIn, get them on your website, get people singing about that. And the one big thing we're seeing in the market at the minute is the progressive companies are moving to RPO or more of an embedded talent model. If you're recruiting more than 10 or more people a year, clients like mine are embedding our talent consultants onto client sites. It's one of the fastest ways of recruiting talent now, and it's one of the most effective used globally. Just quickly on that, social media for recruitment, still LinkedIn is the most dominant. Facebook and Twitter are next beyond that. Are you active on all these platforms? And then in the bottom right just shows the growth of these sectors. We had a decrease in IT, manufacturing, healthcare sectors over the last 2019 period. But coming out of this, certainly what I'm talking about, RPO and the growth of this sector, it's going to increase by about 9 to 10%. That's a £2.74 billion growth in that sector. So just to flag that to you, for those clients, and this is my final slide, for those clients that are thinking differently about their recruitment, looking at talent partnership, which is is our version of RPO. This is where we are embedding a talent partner into organizations. That's to work closely with your in-house recruitment team or your hiring managers, and then they would manage a recruitment business like Jackson Hogg. All of our STEM-driven consultants, we would then manage beneath that a whole raft of second-tier agencies. So basically, we have got specialists for every type of role that you might recruit within your organization, whether it's managed from our team or another tier of specialist agencies. It reduces time to hire because you're chasing all the hiring managers for feedback. You've closed all those iterative loops. You improve the quality of hire process. All the things we've talked about so far, people dropping out of process, salaries going wild, why are people going in and out of process, all the problems with the market that we talked about. You're trying to do your best to constrain them whilst managing the internal stakeholders so they understand what's going on externally in the wider market. It helps you deliver headcount plans and allows you to control costs. If anyone wants to chat to me about this later, feel free to catch me. And I'll put on there any questions, but Chris tells me I can't take questions now. But if you need to catch me for anything, there might be a time at the end, or feel free to catch me on LinkedIn and I'll catch you for anything else externally. Over to Chris.
Brilliant, thank you, Richard. And as you say, if we do have time at the end, we'll take the opportunity to take questions. We do have one or two in the Q&A box now. So between now and towards the end of the session, if you have any questions, please do ask them. And if we don't get a chance in the session, we will also follow up as well. And thank you, Richard. Some fantastic stats and also some brilliant recommendations for people to take away. So moving on, we've got Sharon Broughton, who is head of HR and consultants, HR and legal consultancy at Make UK. To move a bit further on that, staff retention strategies and the sorts of things you can do to keep your staff, which I think, Richard, did you say would be the best way of keeping people in the market and the best thing to do rather than going out to the market for new staff. Over to you, Sharon.
Thanks, Chris, and thanks, Richard. Teed me up nicely for some of the things I'll go into a little bit more detail about. So for those of you that don't know me, I, as Chris said, head up the HR and legal commercial team. So we tend to support clients with all their HR and legal project work. So some of that is strategic interventions with recruitment and retention challenges. So in this session, what I'm going to cover is some of the key areas that you need to focus on when you're looking at staff retention strategies. So Richard already outlined that the recruitment market is obviously very competitive, and securing the candidates that you need is not just obviously about the pay on offer. There's a whole myriad of other things to consider. So clearly it's even more important than ever to be looking strategically at your your retention strategies. So that's not just obviously about retaining your existing staff, but also, like Richard was saying, about creating the right environment and culture, which is ultimately going to make your company an attractive proposition when you are recruiting. So what does good look like? For those of you that have listened to any of my webinars previously, tending to be with Chris as chair, you'll know that my starting point for any sort of strategic planning is to always start with understanding what you're currently working with. In my experience, organisations do tend to know they have a problem and believe they know what the answer is, but they fail to understand what the root cause of the problem is and what they're actually trying to achieve. So for me, it's necessary to go back to basics and understand what it is as a business you're looking to achieve. So for example, is that growth? Is that efficiency? Are you looking to enter into new markets? Are you looking to embrace new technologies? And that's not just now, but that's in the next 12. That's not just sort of now, but it's into the next 12 months and it's in the longer term. If you clearly understand that, then it's going to help you shape a roadmap of how operationally you want to get there, and then support the creation of the people or the workforce plan. It's pointless putting in place any new systems and processes for retaining and developing your talent that don't fit your longer term needs, both from a cost and a time point of view, but also in keeping employees engaged and motivated. Employees, however forward thinking, still find change unsettling. So to consistently change a message for the future of the company and therefore their progression plan is going to create a sense of unease and potentially force your employees out. So if you start with good HR metrics and complement this right the way through to what your employees currently think and value, even a really well thought through strategy is destined to fail if it's based on assumptions rather than facts. So whether it's simply putting some suggestions to your employee forum or a short staff pulse survey, covering what you're considering as options, or you go full in with a full-blown employee engagement survey and then employee working groups to support that implementation, this information is undoubtedly going to give you a good starting point to identify what good is going to look like for your staff, which in turn is obviously going to help you create buy-in for any changes or programs that you decide to implement. Although, as Richard mentioned, what good look like is obviously going to vary depending on your staff makeup and its priorities. Fundamentally, there are some key areas that you're going to need to consider to strategically manage staff retention, which we'll touch on now. So the first one for me is that even though employees tend to take a strategic approach to recruitment as part of the wider talent management or people strategy, many forget to put in place comprehensive data strategies to inform resourcing decisions. Developing your workforce planning skills and activities does give you the information you need to put in place short, medium and long-term plans for internal development and succession, which in turn aids retention as employees have a clear development or progression path through the organisation. So what should you consider? So looking at these on this slide, so some of the questions you should be asking yourself: what are your business critical roles, and are there any gaps that you need to fill or develop people into? Have you got an up-to-date skills matrix to identify skills gaps and development? What's the ratio that you normally work to in terms of external recruitment and internal development? What's the ratio you usually work with in terms of permanent versus contingent workforce? So that's your contractors or your temporary staff. And how might these ratios need to change as a response to the challenges of Brexit and wider economic factors? Will these roles you require in the medium and long term look the same as they do now? If not, and obviously picking up on Richard's point where he was saying about betting on talent, if not, then obviously now is the time you need to plan in how you will develop the skills or talent that you need. Many businesses forget to review their requirements and just replace that like for like. And when you're thinking about recruitment more specifically, what are the key roles that you need to recruit for? And which roles would make the biggest difference to your business? So if there's only 3 or 4 that you can afford to do and really put some gusto behind, which roles would they be? And then finally, if you're collecting and making good use of your resourcing data and evidence, you can justify your spend when budgets might be limited. Given the high cost of recruitment, you'll tend to find many internal initiatives can be much more cost effective and show a bigger return on investment. So collating data is key. So some of the things you could look at is things like cost per hire, performance and turnover rates of new hires, as well as overall effectiveness of attraction methods. So you've got the data, so what's next? It's critical for retention that employees feel they have a clearly defined progression and development path. Some employees will want to clearly see how they can get to the top within an organisation, whereas others, as we seemingly see more often, are looking for development in transferable skills to give them job security. And if all else fails, skills they can transfer easily in the external job market. Whilst an affinity with an organisation's values is seen to be top of most employees' wish lists, career development opportunities and flexible working are also among the more important elements. So using your workforce planning data to good effect to pull together succession plans and development initiatives is critical to retaining your talent pool. So if we start with the ability to articulate and deliver a clearly defined development path, communication is king, and you'll hear me say this throughout the rest of this presentation. Employees clearly need to know and understand what your vision looks like. So many employees that I see fail at this point, although they do have a structured progression program and a clearly defined route through the organisation, they do not articulate it very well. If an employee doesn't understand and buy into their development path from day one, then the commitment and loyalty is obviously going to wane. They need to understand, what does each stage require? What does their roadmap look like? Is there options to do other things along the way? For example, use their skills or strengths to go into different departments. There's not always a one-size-fits-all route for progression for all employees. For example, you may give an operational manager support function experience to sort of widen their understanding of the organisation. Ensuring you've got those formal structures in place to deliver this is key. Do you have a competency framework? Have your jobs been through a job evaluation process? Do you have a training matrix? Do you run annual appraisals or personal development plans? Is there a defined succession planning process? You need to be clear on what the commitment and deliverables are from both parties. So time, training requirements, need for self-learning. So many programs fail as both parties assume the employer will do the work for the employee. So for example, the expectation might be that they'll send them on a training course or provide constant support and opportunities to hone their skills. However, in practice, it's the commitment from both parties that's so important. with both parties working together to drive the development. For example, an employee should be constantly looking for his own opportunities to develop relevant skills, rather than always waiting for the employer to necessarily put them in front of them. They should also look to keep a learning log of all the activities they've undertaken that helps them achieve their progression steps, really putting the ball back in the employee's court. Bear with me, I was saying earlier to Chris and Richard that my computer's got a little gremlin in it, so it likes to flick on in the slides. So apologies if my slides flick forward. I'll carry on. If an employee is truly going to believe that an organisation will deliver on their promises, they need to see real life examples of other employees who have progressed or are undertaking career enhancing activities. As we said at the beginning of this slide, communication is key. So rather than see progression and career opportunities on job sites externally, you need to really shout loud and often about employees internally who have progressed, reiterating this at every opportunity. And I'm sure Anita's will go into more detail about what they've done internally with their sort of career progression programs. But organisations who do this successfully will use every opportunity to recognise achievement, whether it's an internal newsletter or at a department team meeting, really explaining how the employee has made the progression, not just news about their new role and responsibilities. The process for identifying employees for opportunities, whether that be promotions, secondment or project work, should also be really open and transparent. This way, employees do not just see progression internally, having never been aware there was an opportunity. Although as an organisation, this may make the process seem really time-consuming, it should be seen as a real positive process where you're encouraging people to put their name forward, and as a result of that, identifying employees who are keen to progress. So even if they aren't successful in their role, you can see as part of their feedback process, assessing how you look to develop them into a role that will be suitable in the future. Not only will this keep them really engaged, you can really manage expectations with regards to timeframes and the development that they as an individual will need to make any progression steps. And hopefully that stops them looking externally because they understand where they sit within the organisation. So a key area to consider in succession planning development is planning how to fill your future leadership and hard to fill niche roles. Considering that internal mobility early on in mid-career paths with maybe more inclusive and challenging experience, you can help facilitate that career growth early on so you can develop your in-house talent. Those well-defined and supported programs are also going to challenge those employees you are nurturing in the hope this will encourage them to stay as well. Externally, another thing you could consider is people from different industries or backgrounds who may have transferable skills and knowledge and can bring fresh insight. Again, picking up on Richard's point around sort of taking a bet on talent rather than skills. With the data capture that we mentioned at the beginning around your skills matrix, having that in place is obviously then going to make it much easier to identify and initially focusing on investing in the areas most important to the organisation and filling potential skills gaps. As we've seen with the pandemic, technological change means that employers are increasingly depending on highly transferable core skills. So things like communication, teamwork, and problem solving. So make sure that your skills development and programs address these essential skills gap, as well as your technical and job specific skills gap. You could also look to prioritize your transferable skills as an area of focus when you're doing that as a broader diversity and inclusion strategy that looks beyond the normal or usual talent pools. One of the other things to look at as well is introducing opportunities that bring great learning but don't necessarily cost the earth. So things like work shadowing, mentoring and cross-function project working. Utilising your workplace coaches and mentors to champion skills development that focuses more on future needs, not just existing roles, is a good starting point. You could also consider low-cost digital e-learning or bite-sized training options for internal skill development too. This obviously complements face-to-face learning or just as annual refreshers, but obviously the really low-cost opportunity. One area that I'm keen to stress not to forget about, and one that we're seeing a huge rise in development and sort of budget pots being put towards, is the role of the line manager. It's clearly fundamentally changed over the last 2 years. So now it requires a real blend of skills. So managing both work requirements and I'll use the buzzword, the new normal pressures that employees are facing. Likely as well in your organisation, you'll have changed working practices and policies. So the parameters of the line manager's role and remit are also likely to have changed. It's clearly therefore even more important that you're developing training and supporting them, so they're clear on their remit and responsibilities of role. The other area is also to make sure they're emotionally resilient in the challenges that they face, because they're obviously taking on a lot of the support required from their employees. If you do this and you're supporting them in becoming good line managers, this is going to aid retention, not only for them, because obviously you're showing a commitment to them, but also the talented individuals that are working for and alongside them. And finally, don't forget about inclusivity in your approach. Understand the aspirations of your people, as this can really help target development and aid retention. Make sure your managers know and they're interested in the development needs and careers of their team members. Look at committing to flexible learning, so workers with parenting or caring responsibilities aren't shut out of development opportunities. You could look at paid study leave or training during working hours, which can also overcome any financial barriers that inhibit staff from taking time out to learn. The other thing that's I think is even more important is ensuring roles that can be undertaken flexibly from home or as hybrid working are clearly stated from the outset as such. So then there's no perceived barriers to development and progression. One of the things that we've seen a lot of our clients do is when they're putting together job descriptions, they're very clearly outlining in the job description if that role is something that can be done as a home or hybrid or flexible working role. Obviously that helps internally, but obviously it also helps when you looking at recruiting externally as well. So one I'll just quickly go over it is obviously low staff turnover. It seems strange to put this in this webinar, but obviously, I think especially in the manufacturing sector, even though we're talking that there's a lot of employees that are looking to move on and staff turnover may be high from that point of view, obviously a low staff turnover with an ageing workforce is a big consideration for the manufacturing sector. Getting that balance is really important in staff turnover, because obviously too much turnover and you're going to be losing key knowledge and experience, but too little and you're going to get entrenched conflict, little innovation, and obviously, like I said, an ageing workforce. Costs of recruiting, as we've already said, and training is generally more significant than obviously retaining your staff. So if you know what your employee turnover is and it's a real issue for you, then you should maybe look at benchmarking to see how you compare with other organisations. You can also look at who you're losing and why. Are you keeping the desirable employees and losing the undesirable ones? If so, that's great. But if not, why are desirable employees leaving and the undesirable ones staying? As Richard's already mentioned, staff turnover figures are up. This is reflective of a much more buoyant marketplace, which is showing that confidence from employees that they will move for career progression if it's not offered internally. Previously, with a less buoyant market, employees were more reluctant to move unless pushed or the opportunity felt more secure than the one they were in. Although for an organisation, from a leader's perspective, this creates a challenge, and hence obviously our webinar today, it also gives you an opportunity to fairly assess your position in the marketplace, as people are hopefully choosing to stay or leave for their own personal reasons rather than based on nervousness around job security. So the competitive marketplace, again, like I said, Richard set me up for quite a few of the areas I was going to talk around in a little bit more detail. But as we've already seen, presently it's very much a candidate-driven market. So understanding and articulating your offer clearly in comparison to your competitors is a really important dynamic to understand, especially with some of your employees who are highly desirable within your marketplace. If other organisations are prepared to offer what it takes to secure a candidate, even if your employees aren't actively looking, they can still be approached, and you need to feel comfortable that they understand and they buy into the true value of your employment outside of the standard salary comparisons. So do you actively promote the benefits of working for you? Like we said on the last point, communication is king. Do they realise the non-financial recognition they receive? For example, things like team away days, internal awards. If they have a great working environment and facilities, do their staff realise how lucky they are? Have you produced a total reward statement which outlines in real financial terms what the true value annually is of all their benefit and remuneration? Competitors may offer a higher salary, but the overall package may be less when you take into account things like pension contribution rates, provision of healthcare, and other flexible benefits. For some employees, this may be really important, but they have not considered how much they would be losing if they had to pay for the benefits themselves. The message, however, should be little and often and fresh, so not the same message set consistently, as people are going to switch off. So it's really important that that's strategically planned as part of your communications. So moving quickly through now, I'm nearly finished there, Chris, I see with the time. So again, this slide is obviously talking about time and commitment. So as a business, one of the fundamentals of an engaged workforce is one who want to remain with you, is that they can see themselves, that the business takes development progression seriously and willing to put in the time and commitment at every level to achieve this. Organisations fall on this point, as although the message may be clear from the top and new recruits feel buoyed by this, in reality, day to day, the time needed to fully deliver the promises is not given. Sometimes this may be an individual manager, but invariably, if the organisation does prioritise operational deliverables and fails to recognise the additional pressures of developing an employee properly brings, business as usual activities are always going to end up taking priority, and your development activities will be pushed on the back burner. It's important that whatever promises or commitments are made, a realistic assessment of the additional resource and time required to deliver these is made and actioned. When you're designing the structures and frameworks to support these activities, just be realistic about timings. So don't plan in shadowing activity or development days during your busiest period of the year. Obviously, with all good intentions, the experience is unlikely to be a positive one, as when you're in a more normal operating period. Also look to involve those leaders or managers who will be delivering the support in the design and the delivery planning processes. This should help then engender your buy-in to the processes, so their input's been sought and they should understand both the business and personal benefits of developing people. You don't want managers to be disengaged from the process, demonstrating those behaviours to a potential high achiever that are not consistent with what you're looking to develop. Again, key is employee engagement, as we've said all along. An engaged workforce is always going to strive to achieve more, and these behaviours are what you want your talent to see as the fundamentals to achieving success in the business. And finally, as I touched on at the beginning, it's all very well putting in place all your structures, processes and people to support your talent retention development, but have you checked whether it's right for the type of people you're looking to bring on the journey with? As I mentioned before, your employee engagement surveys internally and benchmarking activity externally can give you a much more realistic insight into how best to future-proof and plan. Look at what motivates an employee. Is it money, security, progression, colleagues, managers? What does success look like for them? as you'll always have staff who only want to go so far in an organisation, or their skill sets will only allow this, but could still be classed as talent given what they bring to the organisation and how difficult a replacement would be. You don't want to demotivate these individuals by tailoring all your efforts to purely progression focus. Consider how they perceive the business. As Richard was suggesting, is it progressive, dynamic and forward thinking, or bureaucratic and an immovable beast? Frustrations are going to arise from the smallest things, so it's important to understand employees' perceptions. If you can address all of these issues and identify what the root cause is, you can fix those problems quickly. And finally, how are you viewed in the marketplace? Are you a market leader and the one to work for, or is there more of a PR focus that needs to take place to cement your position? If you're looking at any kind of employee engagement survey, always remember to ensure you're adding filter questions or demographic questions at the start. These are going to give you the responses you need to analyze the information. So for example, length of service, department, level of job. You could easily misinterpret your responses to critical questions if you miss out things like these, because what's important to someone who's new to the company may be less important to someone with 20 years service. And you're likely to find your longer serving staff will be the aging workforce with differing perceptions and requirements. So I suppose in summary, it's all boiling down to defining your purpose, culture, opportunity and brand correctly and ensuring any promises that you made are kept. So there's just a quick slide there in terms of what we can do within Make UK, what we can help you with, but obviously we can talk about those things at a later date or questions at the end. So I'll pass back over to you, Chris.
Brilliant, thank you very much. Excuse me, brilliant, thank you very much, Sharon. And I do also want to move on to our next section, which is to kind of get a feedback from our audience this morning on some of the topics already mentioned. So I will launch our poll. We've got 8 questions and all responses are anonymous, so don't be afraid to please submit your answers, and hopefully there'll be some really good insight, A, for Make UK, but also directly for you guys and how other businesses are finding some of these issues and challenges that Richard and Sharon have expertly gone through. But I will be quiet for a couple of moments to give you the opportunity to read through and pop in your responses. And thank you to those just answering. We're getting quite a few coming through now, so we'll give it another 30, 50 seconds or so. And Lindsay, if you're looking to answer that question, if we go with office staff on that one, but yes, obviously we could be more specific around sales and BD or business development. And we're still getting responses, so 15, 20 more seconds. And I think we'll end the poll there. So sharing the results, but hopefully you can see them on your screen. Apologies if you can't. I think it sometimes depends how you log in, whether you'll see these, but quickly as a rundown of those results. Are you having difficulty in recruiting staff at your business? The vast majority saying yes, 88%, perhaps unsurprisingly, but an interesting sort of around 3% saying no. So we'd like to see what you guys are doing to not have that difficulty, or perhaps across the business. Which areas of the business are you struggling to recruit in? I think the largest we're seeing is skilled, so those in production and manufacturing, followed by unskilled in production and manufacturing areas of the business, and also with technical staff, so very much are on the technical skills area, which I'm sure Bhavina will be particularly interested when we move through our speakers. What initiatives are you using or planning to implement to retain staff? A very mixed response, actually. I think our winner is pay and benefits benchmarking. The second place is hybrid and home flexible working is the two biggest drivers, but I think you can see there lots of the other things suggested are also being used. However, net zero, kind of more general value considerations, probably the least relevant. Are you intending to adjust your workforce's pay? So we can see that there are no pay reductions, and there's about 12% making no changes, but the absolute vast majority are making some, with the highest proportion in increase of 2 to 3%. Are you engaging with schools, colleges and universities to drive the next generation? We've got just over a third saying yes, nearly a quarter saying you plan to next year, around 40% saying no. And are you planning to recruit apprentices next year? We've got nearly 70% saying yes. And then some questions at the end regarding how Make UK can more actively support, both in terms of our apprentice training facility in Aston, which we hosted the Shadow Education Secretary at yesterday, Kate Green, and also some of the things that Sharon mentioned about in how HR and consultancy Make UK can help as well. So I'll stop sharing, and I mentioned earlier, but we're really pleased to be joined by Anita Davenport Brooks, who is People, Culture and Compliance Manager at Lander Automotive, and a very valued Make UK member, and not least winner of our Midlands and East Developing Future Talent categories, and over the last few weeks, as we mentioned earlier, Anita, one of our top 100 manufacturers for the Manufacturer publication as well. So how are you tackling with this at the moment? And please let us know how Lander Automotive are doing with recruitment and retention.
Okay, thank you. I'll just share my screen. Okay, can everybody see that?
Yes, fantastic.
Okay, brilliant. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about engagement and retention and recruitment. And listening to the two speakers earlier, it's just echoed quite a lot about what we've been through and what we're seeing as well. I just want to set up going back to 2019, really. I know we've had COVID in between, but our kind of negative journey, our challenges occurred at the end of 2018 when we had a reduced customer demand by our biggest customer. And we had to start thinking a little bit differently, and we started doing layoffs and short-time working and redundancies. Then Brexit came into force, we were having supply issues, and then there was COVID. So we got the furlough scheme, we were having to furlough people. We were having to look at, how we needed to manage our workforce while they were off site, but also who we needed back in, what we needed to build, because there were still some customer demand, but not too much. And then in 2021, we've still got COVID, but now we've got the semiconductor issue, and that's having further impacts on reduced customer demand for us. So we recognised that there were some opportunities. So we've got an apprenticeship programme. We recruit apprentices every 8 weeks, and they go mainly into manufacturing and engineering. The layoffs and short-time working actually was received quite positively by everybody, and that was all about getting the communication right. We looked at it with them about buying 10 days additional holiday, which they thought, was good, and we had to manage that quite tightly for 2019, but it worked really well. And we needed to make sure we continued with the employee recognition events that we have and our charity events, because we try and engage with our workforce as much as possible by having at least 3 or 4 charity events a year, all for Birmingham Children's Hospital. And in 2020, we recognised that we needed to continue upskilling the existing workforce. In line with the apprenticeship programme, we'd spent a lot of money, a lot of time getting apprentices into the business, and we needed to make sure we got the apprentice, those on the shop floor, those other team leaders, those other technicians were also being upskilled. We utilised the furlough quite a lot, so that helped us financially. But we also decided it was the ideal time to redesign our strategy and our values, and we went away for an away day to talk about the values, and actually we ended up redesigning them. What happened was we weren't able to put those values out, but we managed to, we're currently working with an organisation to look at the strategy, and we're actually working on the strategy currently. So I'll talk about that a little bit more later. And this year we had a benefits platform, which was mainly for the staff. And I said, you know, one of the things, people on the shop floor haven't got access to it. They should have access to it. We are losing employees that are not having proper pay increases because of everything that's been going on. We're furloughing people. Let's start linking the rewards to the values. Let's start making sure all our employees have access to the benefits platform. And we also took on 2 new businesses as well in September. So Max Power and Woven Tubular Components. They joined us, and I thought this was an ideal opportunity to go in there and start looking at how we could do some more secondments by developing some of our employees and their employees and doing some exchanges as far as development is concerned. So one of the reasons why we had the apprenticeship programme going back in 2016 was because we were struggling recruiting for the shop floor. We weren't getting, welding is one of our key skills, and it was so difficult to recruit. So we decided to recruit our own superheroes, we call them. So we had our provider recruit them for us, and we put a programme in place with them. So we got in-house classroom training, we got them to look at projects such as 5S projects out on the shop floor, to learn more about the business, and also to actually receive training on the shop floor. And that worked really well because they wore orange, and they still wear orange t-shirts now, the apprentices in the first year, so we can recognise them. Everybody knows they're an apprentice, everybody engages with them, supports them, gives them a bit of guidance and coaching as well. And we also put in place what we call a placement plan, and we looked at job rotations. So for some of those that were becoming shining stars, and there's some names there, we thought, well, right, we're going to give them opportunities in different areas of business. So we had a seven-month rotation plan, and we moved them around. But the reason why we kept it to 7 months is because occasionally we had the odd 1 or 2 that stayed a little bit longer in each department. This has meant that all the names at the side, those that were in this rotation plan, actually went into specific departments. So Jonathan went into purchasing, Patrick became a team leader, Maciek came into HR, Jade, a team leader, Sam went into the lean team, Akil also went into purchasing, and Luke went into quality. So it was an opportunity to look at how do we develop these individuals, how do we grow the talent, but keep the skills in-house, keeping them engaged. And having a rotation plan like this meant they got to learn different areas of the business. We also put in place mentoring and coaching programs. This still is carrying on at the moment. And we also have meet the leaders sessions. So when our apprentices first join us in the classroom, they meet with the directors, they meet with the managers, and we talk about our journey, we talk about our careers, we talk about where we started. Our MD was an apprentice, similar situation as our apprentices now. So he's talking to them about the opportunities and the development and the growth that they can have if they apply themselves, if they want to be part of the family. You know, there is an opportunity for growth. And we always talk about how many apprentices we've managed to grow within our business into different roles. And here's just an example. So we've had 1 to 25 cohorts since 2016, and we've given them opportunities to go into on a rotation plan. They've obtained different positions into different departments, and they've progressed as far as qualifications are concerned. So I've had over 120k in recruitment savings for permanent roles. And it's meant that 32% of the apprentices have moved into substantive roles, which is really key. So making savings on recruitment is so important, but I've also saved an extra £150,000 on agency labour, and making sure that we're retaining the good agency labour, the ones that are, you know, really engaged, that really want to be here. Instead of having a quick turnaround of agency labour, they are quite steady here. So it's meant that we can concentrate more on how we can develop them too with our on-site agency, as well as, you know, engaging more with our existing workforce. So as I spoke earlier about the development we needed for our existing workforce, so now we've got 95% of our existing employees have now completed a level 2 qualification. 15% of those are starting a level 3 qualification, and 2% are working towards a level 4, level 5. We also made sure that we did a lot more internal training and engagement. And I know people may say hazard spotting, you know, what impact will that have? Well, it has a cultural impact, because it helps people to recognise that they can spot something, it's not right, they can report it and we'll do something about it, or they can do something about it and let us know they've done something about it, and we recognise that. And it forms part of our new values as well. We also worked on other development projects, such as the Flash Academy, which I know are working with Make UK now. And we worked on the trials and the introduction of that on how to learn a language. And that was fantastic for our operators whose English was not so brilliant. We helped Flash Academy with the videos, with publicity of it. And the reason why we did that is because we wanted the operators to have an understanding, and this was agency workers as well as our own operators, that we were willing to invest in them and invest the time. So we had a leaderboard on who was spending the rest of the time learning a language, how far they got, and giving out little gifts such as a free vend on the vending machine. Sometimes it's just the simple stuff that was engaging with them more. And we recognise, obviously, with COVID and everything that's happened, stress management has become really big. So we needed to make sure that we, not only with our mental health wellbeing programme that we got in place, we introduced the EAP programme and the Thrive app, which is available to all our employees and our agency workers. We make sure it's publicised, we communicate it, it's part of the induction process. And we, you know, it gives them the opportunity to know that they can download tools and become engaged in a different way, rather than us just giving them information. It's something that they can obtain in their own time, in their breaks. And we're looking at some secondments at the moment in other areas across the business to our other sites, and we're working on a placement plan for that. And I know it's been mentioned before about secondments, succession and career planning, and how important that is. And what we've recognised is we've got 3 businesses and we've got 3 different types of behaviours. So we're now having to look at, well, we want them to work the land away. We need to make sure that we're supporting them, that we're here to help them, we're here to guide them, but we're not going to be, you know, taking over. We want them to grow with us. So the secondments really are about getting them to understand the way Landa works. So far in the last few weeks, we've been sending out to our agency workers and staff and people off the shop floor and our apprentices to work in different teams across the 2 businesses. And we're doing that so that they can see that we're not just sending managers in, We're sending some of our experienced apprentices to work with them to say, this is the way we monitor production, this is the way we work, this is the way we do 5S. Our agency workers, with what's been happening with the semiconductor issue, we were at risk of losing some of our really good agency workers. So we spoke to our on-site agency team and we said, could we move them to our other sites? We're willing to arrange transport, especially to Malvern. We're willing to support them in whatever way possible, but also to make sure that the other sites have the support they need, because as soon as we took over, they sent to us requests for recruitment, the shop floor, they got arrears. So rather than go, yeah, okay, here's a flood of people that you're going to recruit that nobody's ever met before, we thought, well, actually, we know these agency workers are really good. They're very dedicated. They understand how Lander works. So we asked for them to go over. We asked for volunteers. We had a town hall meeting with all our operators, all our apprentices, and all our agency workers. And we said, we're looking for volunteers. Who wants to go? And the majority put their hands up and said, what do you need me to do? I'm quite happy. And it gives them the opportunity to actually learn a little bit more about another organisation, but also grow their own coaching and development skills as well. So not just for the staff, not just for the managers, this is across the board. And it's been received really well. And luckily we are retaining the agency workers. So recognition is really important. We've still, over the difficult times, continued with our employee and our apprentice of the month, and our agency workers are also recognised by the agency company as well. They do exactly the same celebration events, and all this is posted on social media. We've also introduced a happy birthday celebration with a card, a little bag that we've designed ourselves with chocolate in it or whatever we think they might like. And we hand that over to them, take a photograph, post it on social media. It's because it's just something simple and it's been received really well. It's not cost a lot of money, but it's like, oh, you've remembered my birthday. And it's just that little simple thing that we thought, right, let's do something a little bit different. We still had our MD briefing sessions, even through COVID. And through that, we've always talked about where the business is going, what's happening, how, they're going to help us grow, develop, get out of this crisis. We look at the service recognition, and also their achievements. So when they've achieved a qualification, they come up, they collect the certificate, and it's recognising them, not just the apprentices, but also the staff as well. And it's been received really, really well and continues to be. And I know Chris talked about awards before. I mean, we've been so lucky since 2016 to win different awards, but this is just a snapshot of National Apprenticeship Awards. As the regional chair of the West Midlands Apprenticeship Ambassador Network Group, that's a mouthful, this is my little bit of a plug, why it's so important to put your businesses forward for these awards, because you're being recognised not only by other organisations, nationally, regionally, but also by the government as well, that your apprenticeship programmes that you have are, the top. They are being recognised out there. It's good for your business. It's good to promote your business through social media. Anyone that knows me, I'm always on LinkedIn. I'm always posting something. I'm always putting up the positive stuff there, not only about our employees, but about our awards, about all the things that we're trying to do, and how engagement is so important. And people do see that, and they're doing contact me and say, are there any vacancies? I'd love to work at Lander. We were lucky last year, even though there weren't many award ceremonies, we were ranked 14th in the UK as a top 100 apprenticeship employer by the government. And this year we've run the regional awards for SME employer, again by the ESFA, and we are in the nationals for this year as well. We're so pleased. I've been trying for a long time to win the Developing Future Talent regionally, and we're winning it this year was one of the highlights for my year, and the TMMX Awards definitely, and also the Top 100. But it's not just a single effort of one department. This just demonstrates the whole organisation's commitment to development, to skills and to people. And people may say, oh, it's a lot of hard work to go in for awards. I would say you get a lot of support from organisations like Make UK that have got lots of people there available to say, we'll help you to put your submission together, we'll give you the what you need to do to put in a good submission. There's lots of seminars, there's lots of virtual events you can attend. So I always say to organisations, give it a go. I mean, we gave it a go in 2016 and we've been winning something every single year, which we've been so lucky. But also it's people out there see that your organisation is definitely dedicated to development and dedicated to people. And if you're interested in joining the West Midlands Apprenticeship Ambassador Network, please get in touch. So January 2022 onwards, we're looking at T-levels, the opportunities in manufacturing that are coming up. There's now a manufacturing T-level, which is fantastic. We're going to use that to support our apprenticeship programme. We are trying to recruit Kickstarters. I know that has been mentioned before, but we've had difficulties recruiting them. We've had 2 out of 20 vacancies that we've had, but we are still trying at the moment and working with our provider. We're reviewing our opportunities for flexible apprenticeships. This is a new government initiative that's come out. Now we have 3 sites. We've got the opportunities for secondments and being able to utilise that programme. So that's something that we're really excited about. We are rolling out our new business strategy, our new values, and new development and engagement strategy across the 3 sites next year. And we're inviting the managers from the other sites to enjoy this on the strategy day in January, so that we can actually have their contribution before it's all rolled out, and also they're involved in how it's going to be communicated. And we're looking to introduce more further engagement activities on site here at Landau, but also at the other sites, because they don't have any at the moment. So we're going to try and introduce those there. So that's the Landau team. Thank you for listening. I hope it was useful. And I will stop share now.
Yeah.
Go back. There we go.
Thanks for that, Anita. I'm not sure if Chris is frozen. He looks very still on his screen, but thank you for that. And you can see with all the comments coming through on the chat how everyone found that so inspirational, and all the well done messages are all popping through. So hopefully that's nice to see as well. Are you back with us, Chris?
Yes, apologies for that technology, but completely agree with Sharon and Anita. Thank you very much for sharing, and good luck in our national awards for developing future talent as well. But conscious of time, and we are also joined by one of our skills policy experts, Bhavina, Make UK. So over to you, Bhavina, on kind of future talent and on a similar vein for engaging talent for the future.
Brilliant, thanks, Chris. I've got the difficult slot following up after Anita, after hearing all of that amazing success story. But you've heard lots about what you can do to kind of attract the next generation of talent, retain them. But what are Make UK doing, and from a policy perspective, what do we share with government to make sure that we're creating the business environment which can help your business to thrive? So our job in the policy team is to make sure that the manufacturing sector is at the forefront of government's thinking. So when they're thinking about labour market shortages, changing policy or developing new policy, how can the manufacturing sector fit into that? And sharing these success stories, but also the difficulties that manufacturers face, is part of our job. So what we're hearing is, of course, manufacturers are focused on recruiting people. A popular route is often the apprenticeship route. We're heavily involved in that programme with the government, but they're also using so many other pathways, and you've heard that from Anita just now. So whether it's employment after formal education, Kickstart, I know there's been some teething issues with that, but also the incoming T-levels. I think it's fair to say that it has been challenging in the last couple of years, and the pandemic has no doubt made things a lot harder. So what we're seeing nationally is actually a fall in the number of businesses engaging in these different pathways to recruit, particularly young people. So I'm going to focus on the next generation of talent here. And that's no surprise. We've seen that across all businesses, all sectors. And it's been for a variety of reasons, whether it's, examinations being pushed back, delayed, or businesses just not in the space to be able to recruit those people at the moment. So much so, actually, only half of manufacturers recruited an engineer and an apprentice last year. Normally, that figure is about at 80%. So you can see the kind of difficulty that we've had. But where there are challenges, there are, of course, opportunities. And I'm pleased to say that in so many of the conversations that Chris and I, and along with companies like Land Automotive, we've been having, is that businesses are in a much better position. So where are those opportunities for attracting the next generation of talent, and how can then government help businesses do that? So the first area I would talk about is just that greater digitalization and green manufacturing changing the skills needs of businesses. So what we've heard for quite some time is actually, although we have traditionally recruited at level 3, level 2, level 3, slowly as businesses react to greater digitalization and the fact that we're transitioning to a more green, more net zero future, it's changing your skills needs to actually need skills at level 4, 5, and 6. And this is going to have a profound impact on how you recruit people. It may be that you recruit them at 2, 3, but those pathways, those lifelong learning opportunities will become increasingly more important to retain those people and move them up that ladder. We've spoken about it previously, but I think in practical terms, it means that you're engaging with your local college or your local training provider to make sure that those pathways are there for people. The second thing I would say is, you would have heard the government mention, we want to create a high wage, high skills industry, high wage, high skills economy. Manufacturing is that. We already pay high wages, it's highly skilled as well. In fact, and it's come up previously, we're seeing wage inflation. We're seeing manufacturers pay above and beyond to keep those people. I think it will create some challenges, particularly for SMEs, where you're really in a competitive environment to be able to hold on to those people. Individuals will get counter offers. They may move to different subsectors. They may move to completely different industries. But where we can really sell the sector and all the added benefits of working within the manufacturing sector, we should do so. So we've been working closely with the government around their flexible working consultation to make sure that actually, yes, it's a candidate-driven market, but there are simply some jobs in manufacturing that you can't do working from home. So actually, how can we add benefits to existing roles to still make it attractive, to still say, yes, you may have to come into the business, but there are lots of benefits of you coming into those businesses, and here are just some. The third opportunity, I think, is around connecting and building better relationships with the education and skills system. So whether that's connecting with your local college, your training provider, your university, to begin to attract talent a lot earlier on. That's really crucial if you want to build that pipeline of talent into your business. And I think Land Automotive are a perfect example of a company doing that so well. At Make UK, we've created a guide which helps manufacturers to put in place the kind of programs or mentor support programs to start to build those relationships. It's not easy, it takes time, sometimes it's organic, but the guide is there to kind of steer you and inspire you with the kind of small things you can do to begin to build those relationships. It is really crucial, because if you can inspire people a lot earlier, they're more likely to not have those kind of sticky old perceptions of manufacturing, because we all know on this call, it's not what people think it is. It's an incredible industry with loads of opportunities, but we just need to show that to people and sell that story a little bit better. So how can government support in that? Well, I think the first thing we're doing is making sure that we're influencing that flexible working consultation response and how that rolls out. we want to make sure it works for our sector, and we need to make sure that government is listening to that. So the data that you've provided today is gold dust for them, and it makes sure that the concerns that we have and making sure that it works for our sector is at the forefront of their mind. Second thing, we've mentioned apprenticeships, but we really need to get apprenticeship numbers back to not just pre-COVID levels, but actually pre-apprenticeship levy levels. They've taken a nosedive, and it will have an impact on the number of young people coming into the sector. So we're working with DfE on a sector-specific program designed to boost numbers. So it could be making transfers easier, making sure that you can use some of your levy funds on things like capital expenditure. Those are the kind of small things that will make it easier and more cost effective to recruit a young person. And the third thing, which is a little bit more holistic and a little bit more high level, is actually making sure that the skills system has inbuilt flexibility within it. Digitalization and green manufacturing is the issue we face now, but in 5 years, in 10 years, it will be something else. And we need to embed that flexibility into the system so that we can react to that. So it's making sure that we have those agile workforces, agile workplaces as well. But I'm confident that we can do that. In fact, we are working on a local skills improvement plan pilot running in Leicestershire, which is designed to match employer skills needs with the actual supply. It's just a pilot. So hopefully there will be some success things, some things that we can learn from that and apply to other areas. But thinking innovatively about how we match that is really crucial as we go forward. I'm conscious of time because it's 3 minutes. So I just want to leave you with this final thought. We've talked a little bit about the perception of manufacturing and the need to be able to offer lots of other additional benefits to get people into the industry. Every time I have spoken to a young person, they don't have that kind of old view of manufacturing, that it's an old factory and the steam blowing out. They don't. They see it as essential industries to fixing some of those big societal issues. And if you can sell your business, and it goes back to Richard's point about selling your story, demonstrating your values, how does it relate to the issues that we're seeing that young people are so closely affected by, you are more likely to get that young person engaged in your business. So what I would do is, don't think about your perception of the industry, think about the perception of that young person thinking about what is manufacturing. And when you can do that, you can sell the story of what your business does so much better. There are a whole host of pathways to get young people into your businesses. Explore them, find the one that's right for your business, whether it's Kickstart, T-levels, apprenticeship, and Make UK will of course be there to support you through that. But I'll just leave you with the fact that young people want to get involved in manufacturing. And as soon as they see how cool, how interesting, how exciting it can be, they're on it. And Landa Automotive is a brilliant example of a company doing that. So I hope that you leave inspired, but also with the tools that you need to attract that next generation and crucially, retain them. So I'll hand back to you, Chris.
Brilliant, thank you, Bhavina, and a really, really good point to end on, and absolutely echo that message about young people moving forwards. But we have only got a couple of seconds left, so what I would like to say is thank you everybody for joining us this morning. Particularly thank you to Richard, Sharon, Anita and Bhavina for sharing their insight. And if you are looking for particular support from Richard in terms of the recruitment world, or Sharon in terms of strategic HR support, but also, which we've alluded to, our technical training facility just outside of Birmingham as well, then please do reach out to us and we can help you directly. But also a recording of this session and the materials presented will come out to our members following this as well. So thank you very much all again, and I will leave it there and have a fantastic day. Thank you.